It's 4 o'clock. I'll call the Community Safety Electronic meeting to order. It's Tuesday, June 11th, 4 o'clock. We have a slight change to the agenda. We're adding item 6A, referral on Steveston parking. And I think there's 2 referrals there, so we're going to have a 6A and a 6B. If there are 2 referrals on Steveston parking, so there's one on lanes and one on the general. So anyway, we're going to have 2 referrals, I believe, on Steveston parking. So we'll make space for those as an A and B. And then 6C is Brighouse Safety. So with the amended agenda, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we have minutes of the previous meeting. All in favor? Any opposed? Thanks. Our next committee meeting date is July 9th, 4 o'clock here in the Anderson Room. First item, community bylaws. Mr. Corrado.
Chair, I have nothing to add and I'm open to questions.
Anybody? No? Councillor Hobbs?
Sure. Thanks, through the chair. Thanks for the report.
But sorry.
That's okay. Thanks, and through the chair, thanks for the report. Just 2 quick ones. On the figure 1 on page 10, the unsightly premises, I don't think it's included in that, but where would it be included when we're talking about sidewalk, overgrowth, bushes, hedges, that kind of thing? Because especially in some of the maybe more established neighborhoods, when you're walking around, it does become a bit of a safety issue or an accessibility issue for some people who can't make it down the sidewalk. And we talk a lot about snow, as we should, in the wintertime, but this can be, a similar kind of challenge for people getting around the neighborhood. So do you have any comment on that? And is it included in these stats?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, it is indeed included, but it's under the first column under the Boulevard section, and that falls under the Boulevard Maintenance Bylaw. There's parameters around trees and shrubs not being obstructive, particularly to traffic, but also encroaching on the sidewalk. And the sidewalk is considered part of the boulevard, so it's captured there. There were 52 of those calls for service that we dealt with, and bylaws works closely with the public works team to address those. There isn't a specific fine that occurs with that. However, we can compel the owner to make a payment once the public works is dispatched to remedy the problem.
Okay, for us average height people, sometimes we run into branches and stuff, but, okay, and so I think you just answered this part of it. It's not something proactively done, it's really done upon complaint, right?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, if road crews, if our bylaw staff notice that, they will deal with it on a patrol, but typically it does come in the form of a complaint.
Okay, and my last question is just about ALR and dumping. And I don't mean the big soil issues. What I'm talking about is the trucks that drive down 7 Road or 8 Road and just, late at night dump, a bunch of gyp rock and toilets and all kinds of stuff, either kind of in a farmer's field or driveway or maybe just off the road, maybe actually on the boulevard. Can you comment at all about how many stats we might have in that regard and anything we've done specifically to address that?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, we haven't had an abundance of those types of calls regarding materials other than soil, where you typically see issues with ALR, but we have had some files on that. And that would be a contravention of a provincial statute, as well as more recent bylaw, which is the Regulation of Materials on Highways bylaw. So it would be bylaws, RCMP, and would be able to enforce that. And then we do encourage members of the public who do see people actively dumping to provide that information through to either the RCMP or to a contact line that we have that goes directly to bylaws.
Yeah, deterring it and education is one thing. I don't think the people that do this kind of thing are interested in that. What I'm wondering about and get asked about by a couple farmers is the ability to do investigations on what would be city property with things like cameras. But as far as I know, we'd probably run into the same issues we've run into as far as the resolution of the cameras and being able to identify people and or license plates. So we aren't doing that kind of operation now.
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, currently no, we are not capturing license plate data vis-a-vis dumping. We haven't had any particular instance where we've had ability to present that evidence to the RCMP. What threshold would be required would probably make sense to actually have the vehicle being captured in terms of license plate. You need that level of resolution. But most of our complaints have come in after the fact, and it's difficult to pursue those investigations if you don't literally catch people in the act.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Galanders?
Thanks through the chair. Thanks for the report. I just have a few little questions on CS 13, animal protection and dog licensing. So it's the SPCA that responds to complaints about anything to do with dogs, like off-leash dogs. It's the SPCA that people would call.
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, that is correct.
So if somebody's on the Gary Point or West Dyke Trail and there's dog off leash, we're still getting complaints about it. So we're not doing any sort of active patrolling of these areas, or yeah, we are doing. It says in the report we're doing some active patrolling. But do people know that they're supposed to call? Are they supposed to call the SPCA, or can they call Richmond Bylaws and then you call the SPCA?
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, the public can do both. We would simply route that call immediately to the SPCA, and the city provides overarching overview of that service provider as well. So we do brief on response regarding those calls for service, and the SPCA will deal with those off-leash calls, and they are reflected in the tickets numbers as well.
Yeah, so I figured the 1458 calls for service related to animal control and licensing it's included, off-leash is included in that number?
Indeed it is, yes. And I would say just an addendum, that number is for the entire year to date. It's not just simply for the month of April.
Not just April, yeah, that would be a lot. Okay, and then just a couple more questions. On CS 15, I was just curious about the false alarm budget for 4858. This seems like an odd thing to have a expected revenue from. What is a false alarm budget?
So the false alarm budget is historically derived, and there's typically a lag because a lot of those calls go through police response, and requires a bit of an investigation. So it takes several months before you collect the actual numbers, but it will typically always have a lag, and it will be based on the previous year's numbers.
So can you explain what it is?
Yeah, so typically if police or fire respond to a call and it was deemed that call was unfounded, they're usually responding on a priority basis. It's a serious matter, and if the call was deemed to be false, there's a bylaw violation associated with that.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you.
Councillor Day?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So I
Sorry, you've disappeared off the face of the planet here.
There we go. I'm live. CS 12, parking enforcement is up 33% from last year. Is most of that in the downtown part of Richmond?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, it's spread out quite across the city as well. We typically do have higher clusters of hotspots where there's higher population, and it is typically a sign of there being more people out there shopping, more business activity. So these numbers are starting to parallel what we saw pre-pandemic.
Okay, that's good. So I had an email from Mr. Robert Chan, who lives out by the Ani Hotel and is enjoying having all of the parking in front of his house and all the other houses taken up by people who don't want to pay the $20 to park underneath the hotel. And I just wanted to, on behalf of him, thank city staff. Apparently bylaws got back to him really quickly, bylaw 5870, to let him know that they can only park for so many hours during the day and only for so many days in a row. So on behalf of Mr. Chan, he was extremely happy to know that he had some rights, even though the hotel was taking over the parking in front of those residential homes. But I suspect we're going to hear more from him. Thank you.
We have we have Councillor Heath that wants to
Yes,
speak.
thank you. Just a bit of a follow-up on
Yeah.
Councillor Galander's question regarding the false alarm program. Are they fined for the first false alarm? I know when we ran that in Vancouver, it wasn't until about the third or fourth alarm before we actually fined them.
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, for that answer specifically, I'll defer to my colleagues from both RFR and the RCMP who respond to both of those calls.
Through the chair to Councillor Heed. Typically, the first alarm, we do bill for the first alarm, but certainly repeat offenses, it's a challenge with compliance, and so subsequent alarms are followed up with, but typically we will bill for first alarm based on what's presented on scene. If it's a nuisance alarm that is repeated in the past, then we will bill.
And what is the fine?
I'd have to go back to the specific number and get back to you on that, Councillor.
Okay.
We wouldn't normally, it depends on the circumstances and what the alarm is all about, because we would be answering those alarms a little bit at different reasons as the fire department. But we normally would not be having a fine on file for the first or two offenses.
Yeah, that's similar to what we had in Vancouver. It wasn't until the third offense before it clipped up. But the majority, I'm sure, from the police perspective, would be those, false burglary alarms. And I think we fixed that up so much. So I have to agree with you. I think we need to really look at that fining aspect of it and whether we put that in there as a budget going forward. Because I'm going to ask you, your statistics are probably reduced with the false alarms that you're responding to.
Sorry, through the chair, I wouldn't be able to tell you this statistic. I just remember recently we were looking at them. We didn't have a really high volume of fines in our files that we were sending to the cities, but I would have to look at the statistic to give you a very
Great.
idea.
Thank you. Mr. Corrado, I've got a few questions, and again, following up on Councillor Galander's on the SPCA. Well, it's no surprise, and I know that we're looking at possibly doing something different with that, and that's why we only renewed their enforcement contract for a year, and whether we could bring that back under our bylaw officers, and I've spoken to several bylaw officers that would look at something like that. I think it wouldn't confuse the people in Richmond as much as if we had one central place, and we've got bylaw officers out there that are doing a variety of work, and I think it's would be better off doing it. And if you look at the SPCA, and from my point of view, I refuse, and I did it religiously since I had my police dog for about 30 years, donate to the SPCA. I won't donate now simply because they should not be involved, in my opinion, in those type of enforcement activities, just for major cruelty to animal files, which they have been in the past and they do a good job on. But for enforcement on not having licenses, off-leash, all of those, I really think we should be looking at bringing that back under our fold as we did previously with the bylaw officers. And we've heard the complaints regarding this incredible issue on dog parks and all that. I think we need to bring it back in-house for us to do it because, and I'm glad you corrected that one stat on the 1,458 calls for service, because that would be about 50 calls a day, if it was just a monthly statistics. And then when I look at, for example, on CS14, the animal regulation dog license offenses, we're looking at 28 for April. So I just, and I understand that now it's not that far out of whack from 1,500 to just 28 being fined. So that's my only issue. And it's more or less a comment, Mr. Corrado, that I think we should seriously start to look at and consider, because I know their contract does come up soon on the Enforcement Act. That's fine if they're going to do the care part of it and run the, our dog pound facility and all that. But I really think we've got to look at the enforcement aspect of it. Thank you.
Counselor McNulty?
Yeah, thanks very much. I agree with all the comments going around today. But I want to follow up on this one. If I may, through the chair, just a couple things. When people come and get their dog license from here, do we do anything with regard to education or give them anything with regard to responsibilities of how to handle a dog and when they get that license, what it means? Because when I get my driver's license from my car, I know what my responsibility is, and I don't treat this any differently on it. So do we have anything to hand out?
Through the chair to Councilor McNulty, we do. We have brochures and documentation that go along with renewals and renewal reminder notices that we mail out every year, as well as brand new dog licensing. They've recently been translated to additional languages that we also give out and provide. These brochures highlight the responsibilities of appropriate dog ownership, where they can take them off leash, the rules as it relates to picking up after their dogs, things of that nature. So there is some literature that goes with every renewal or every new license.
And that's absolutely wonderful, makes me feel good. Given we now have, and we've done a lot for dogs, we have dogs off leash, we have dogs on dikes, et cetera. I think that's fantastic in theory, but I want to read you something that I get. I don't play the social media too well, but on that, lady says on the dike here, I'm looking for the name of a person in the distance with a baseball hat holding the dogs. He owns 3 dogs pictured here. I was told he lives at, and I won't read the address, etc. Such and such. His German Shepherd attacked my small dog, causing deep puncture wounds. I need the name so I can pursue recovering vet fees from the individual. Any assistance would be appreciated. This is what caught my eye. Both the RCMP and the SPCA were of no help. If anyone knows this person, please private message me. The old guy walks with dogs too, and they are neighbors, but he was uncooperative. Thank you. And I get probably 2 or 3 of these a day. And I guess what I'm wondering is when a bylaw officer is out there and sees some dog walkers, et cetera, wouldn't he go up and, because they may not have got the brochure here, they might have done it over the phone and got their license. Here's your responsibility, okay? When I hear that 2 of our organizations were of no, I don't know what the situation is. I'm only giving you, this is on the network. And I see it day after day after day. So what I'm trying to wonder whether our SPCA officers out there patrolling where there once it wasn't an incident or where it was reported, and reminding people that, you know, hi, how are you, etc. Here's some reading material. Love you, haven't, love your dog, okay? So I guess, because I go out every morning at 6:30, and when I see a dog, I walk on the road, because that dog lunges at me. In my opinion, that dog assaulted me. I have to get off the public way because somebody's got a big Mastiff or whatever, or a Rottweiler, and I'm not gonna decide, nice dog walking by me, my leg may go off. So I'm wondering, you know, we've been very kind to the dog owners, and 99.9% of them do wonderful things and are no problem. But there's that 1%, and I think that's what we gotta attack and we gotta deal with. Not faulting anybody, I'm just stating on it, and we've got to do more education to these people. We've got a picture of this gentleman, for example, 3 dogs. I don't know the situation, but little Pooch was mauled all to heck, etc. Nobody wants to cooperate. Take your dog home, too bad. And I feel for the lady, feel for the dog, feel for the situation of all the efforts that we put forward in a positive way, like yourselves, okay, for letting people have their animals. So anyhow, I thought I'd put that on, and you said, Councillor Heath said we had 28 this month, total of 1,400, et cetera. But why wouldn't the SPCA at least offer some advice? You know, I mean, I'm not asking you to answer that. You can't, okay? I can't either. I respond.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, staff can definitely follow up with that specific detail in the case. Photographic evidence is certainly the basis for an investigation. Rest assured, staff will work with the SPCA and the RCMP to get to the bottom of that situation. So we would look forward to seeing any evidence that's been provided to you, and we can follow up an investigation.
I leave it with you. I guess I'm trying to be positive. I'm trying to look forward to some proactive solutions. You know, the things we passed a new work on improving a dog park last night, $450,000 to do so. We're trying to make it happy for everybody. And, you know, we get these, I won't say they're one-off, they're coming more and more common. You know, it's like a dog lunging at you. When you're walking down the street, that lanyard that goes whatever, is there a distance when you're in the public? You should let your dog go. Because I have to walk out with the bus. So,
Through the Chair to Councilor McNulty, there is leash length maximums in our bylaws, and that is something that is checked by any attending SPCA officers, and that's also included in our literature that we give for license renewals, echoing Mr. Corrado's point.
and
Yeah.
that's in our book.
Correct.
Good. Okay, all right, thank you. Okay.
Counselor Day?
Yeah, sorry to speak again, but it brings up some important issues. I brought this up about 15 years ago when I was just a citizen after my dog was attacked. Are dog walkers required to have a business license?
Through the Chair to Councilor Day, yes, they are.
Okay. Are dog walkers required to identify themselves as professional dog walkers?
Through the Chair to Councilor Day, typically we would receive a complaint and then we'd follow up and verify if they do have a license. We don't require them to display the license.
Okay. 15 years ago, what I suggested was that a yellow work vest be required by all of the professional dog walkers as a condition of their business license, and that they have some sort of number on the back that indicates who they are. So if they're out walking 3 or 5 dogs, and those dogs are not under effective control, which is required by our bylaws, then someone can say, dog walker number 6624 was at McDonald Beach at 2 o'clock on Friday, and you've got all the information you need. You've got the witness, you've got the person who, you know, has broken the bylaw, and by simply requiring a yellow vest with a number on the back that's registered on their license, you give bylaw officers and the public an opportunity to stop this irresponsible behavior.
Through the Chair to Councilor Day, staff can explore the potential to make that a term and condition to the license or potentially an amendment to the business license bylaw as well.
Thank you.
I don't know, do you need a motion for that, or are you just going to look into it?
I think it's a friendly. I think you can handle it, to look into it, or do you want to, would you like a motion?
To the Chair, staff can explore the feasibility of that and report back.
Thank you. So before we call the question, I believe there's a limit on how many of various different kinds of pets you can have in your home. Is that correct?
Through the Chair to Councilor Liu, there is, depending on the particular pet, for example, there's a limit of, I believe, 2 rabbits.
Through the Chair to Councilor Liu, it depends on the animal in question. These are found under our animal control regulation bylaw. We do specify limits for parrots, birds, dogs, cats, things of that nature. Dogs, for example, they're allowed 3 per household.
3, okay, thank you.
And then once it goes beyond those numbers, it can be deemed to be having a shelter and it would be contrary to zoning.
Okay, and then obviously no goats and pigs and et cetera, okay. No chickens. Those aren't really a pet though, are they? Weird. Anyway, all right, we have a motion? Second, all in favor? Review of hours of operation of karaoke clubs and nightclubs. Mr. Corrado.
Through the Chair, I have nothing further to add and I'm open to questions.
Thank you
Councilor
very
Day?
much, Madam Chair. So these karaoke clubs, and I see there is quite a few of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, that are looking to extend their hours of operation to 3 a.m. How many complaints and bylaw infractions have we had with these karaoke clubs in, say, 2023?
Through the Chair to Councilor Day, bylaw staff have had multiple complaints regarding karaoke's and nightclubs for a range of issues. It could be noise-related, smoking-related, and other bylaw violations. And the RCMP have also responded to a number of calls for service in relation to simple matters such as disturbing the peace, along with other more serious matters under the criminal code.
Thank you.
Counselor Heed?
Yes, correct me if I'm wrong, there's only one club that has made a motion forward to extend their hours of license. It's not all 10.
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, that's correct.
So it's just one we're talking about here. So, you know, I've got some very mixed feelings on this. I have gone in, I've had a look around that area, I've toured that particular club, Zodiac Karaoke. They've invested a considerable amount of money in that. They're trying to comply with some RCMP inspections with regard to the private karaoke rooms there. It's somewhat, although it's not classified as an entertainment zone in that particular area, I guess we were looking for something in Richmond that may be an area we would want to do this. So, you know, I don't necessarily agree that we should just say no, 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 like some other councillors may say no, no, no. I think in the day and age we're in right now and the changes to people's lifestyle and when they socialize and all that, I think we've got to have a bit of an open mind to it. And the fact that, yeah, guess what? You open up a 7-Eleven in a particular area that's open all night, you're going to get complaints from people around there. Yes, that's why we have enforcement to go and deal with it. We are not going to be, hopefully, never a society where we just stop anything simply because we don't want to be able to respond to it. So I'm not necessarily going to be in favor of the resolution that we just say no. I'd be more apt to try and work with this to figure out a way we could come into the 21st century on how people socialize. Yes, there's a high concentration down in the Granville Entertainment Zone, and people often refer to that as why we don't need something in Richmond. Well, I can tell you right now, Richmond will never be Granville Entertainment Zone. And so it's an unfair comparison. That's like comparing the hospital precinct area and the low barrier housing to the downtown east side. You know, that's ridiculous if you use that as a comparison. I just think we need to be more open on this, and I won't be supporting the recommendation of no.
Councillor McNulty?
Yeah, just thank you very much for the report, Mr. Gerlander. It was very comprehensive. I guess in all this, you know, in our concern for public safety, and that has to be paramount in our mind, entertainment's one thing. Do we have requirements? Again, coming back to the same thing, they said they had enhanced security measures, et cetera, and then I read this letter from you. We had a weapons charge, we had a sexual assault, we had 9 assaults, other assaults, we had 4 impaired things. Is this typical? I mean, it's not a very good report card, to be quite frank with you.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, certainly we've seen an increase in the severity of certain, in the past few years, certain serious files in relation to karaoke's. I could defer to my colleague from the RCMP to respond to that. However, we do note in the report there were issues as far back as 2004 specific to a pilot of a liquor primary that was extending their hours till beyond 2 a.m. But it is not uncommon to have calls for service in relation to late at night, regards to any time when you have businesses operating with alcohol and you have potential for violations regarding drinking and smoking, and many jurisdictions experience calls for service at night in regards to that area. So I would have to do greater analysis to see if this is a serious anomaly amongst prior years, but I would suggest that the recent spate does suggest there's a bit of an uptick.
I guess through the chair, and I'm glad you used the word calls for services. You know, at the night market where the families go out, et cetera, we pay for police officers to go there. We demand Mr. Chong to have police on site. Do these folks pay every time a police officer comes to their site? They pay additional and pay for the overtime, and the idea that this officer that came from another area where he or she was protecting the rest of the citizens and being isolated by dealing with this. Do they pay extra?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, the businesses don't actually pay for the additional workload for calls for service. For liquor primaries, if the size of the patrons allowed is higher, then there's a graduated business licensing fee.
Well, the reason I'm getting at that, we go to, as I mentioned, we have the night market with the family, and we charge for 4 police officers to come there, and the kids are having popcorn and wheelies and stuff and having a good time, and now we got this, but these guys don't pay. I'm sort of wondering, is there a standard and a responsibility we expect from them? Again, I come back, is there a checklist that they've got to do? Should there be somebody out on the sidewalk to make sure that somebody doesn't dump in the car, then they're plastered, this, and this? Come back to staffing where they foot the bill, not the public?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, there's various levels of guidelines that are strictly set by the Liquor Cannabis Regulation Branch when business license by law and the RCMP staff attend these calls for service. They routinely go over what are the bylaws and acceptable standards for behaviors, patrons loitering outside, smoking, and the dangers of over alcohol consumption. So those are proactive education measures that are done, and they are to a certain extent effective, but they require constant maintenance and proactive patrols, and which are done frequently.
Then in my opinion, through the chair, they should be paying for that. This should be their responsibility. 60 investigative files, taking our officers away from the good work they do elsewhere, to do that, then they should be paying for it. And I think we should be re-looking at some of our guidelines on that, because we tend to charge people that are having legitimate entertainment, but we're on this because it's not a good report card. You just almost close them down. Never mind extend their hours. And I'm not saying, that's why I asked, this is typical, because there are probably all the others that are following all the guidelines and doing good things. So I'm hoping this is one off. For now, I will support your recommendation, but I think we should be re-examining what we require of that. And if we are down the road thinking of expanding to by half an hour or whatever, then we should have some very, very good, solid reasons why. And we got 2 police officers, former police officers here that have dealt with it as well, to help us along the way and what we should be including in that, of what they're doing. People who go there, that's fine, that's the thing, I respect that. I have no problem with that, what they do. But we also have to look at public safety as a whole in the city and what we're doing and make sure that everybody else is safe at the same time. Good.
Councillor Hobbs?
Thanks, and through the chair, I'll be brief. This isn't about a policy as far as opening up any type of club till 3 in the morning. This is about this place, and the report card analogy is right on. This information is not positive at all. So I'll absolutely be supporting staff's recommendation. And this particular club, has some improvement to do. And then as far as the ending time for, this type of club or facility or entertainment enrichment, I think that's something we look at on a broader basis. But this one in particular, not a good report card is a soft way of saying it, I think. So I'll be supporting the recommendation. Thanks.
Counselor Galanders?
Thank you through the chair. Yeah, so I have some mixed feelings as well. I'm looking at the report card and it certainly doesn't look good as far as the incidents that have happened at this place. But I mean, the majority of the incidents are happening between 12 and 2 a.m. So I'm not convinced that anything more is going to happen between 2 and 3 a.m. unless we actually know and study it, like with a pilot or something. Like I would be curious, and maybe people start to get more tired after 2 and they're less likely to, I don't know. But so, I mean, it definitely seems a bit, doesn't make a lot of sense to approve them extending their hours when they haven't been complying with, people are overly intoxicated. Alcohol is very dangerous. People have been taking alcohol out of there into their cars. People have been overserved. Like, those are really serious things. So they need to get their act together. But I'm concerned with, Richmond not having an area or where people can stay up late and get together, because what we have is we've got things like underground casinos and things popping up on ALR mansions, for example, and we've even had murders and stuff happen at these places, and that's completely out of the city center where nobody's monitoring it. And then people could be at risk. There could be more risk of human trafficking and all sorts of things at these type of places. So if there's a market for staying up late, singing and having that culture, then we should probably be trying to find an area where it's appropriate to do that and have bylaws, like you say, that could encourage enforcement. If you're not complying, you have to pay for the police. The suggestions that Councilor McNulty was making to make it so that people are going to want to comply and they will run it better. And so maybe I could agree with the recommendation to not extend this particular club's license at this time, but perhaps a referral on how we could do a pilot for a certain type of establishment to stay open until 3 a.m. and monitor the results. Then they could all try it. And maybe I'll do that referral after we vote on this one. I don't know. If anyone has any other ideas.
Well, you can make the referral on, and then this parks this essentially, but Councillor Heed?
Yes, my second time around, I'll be rather quick here. It's very dangerous if we're going to start charging people when they call us. That's not what we're mandated to do on public safety. So we have to be careful. If it's completely out of range of what the average is, and I'm sure the superintendent here is very well aware of problem-oriented police, and they know those approaches to deal with it. The question I have for you, Mr. Corrado, did you compare this to, for example, the Cactus Club? The Cactus Club, which I frequent occasionally, people, overconsumption there. The Uniform Gang Task Force is always in there walking through, always stopping people. But, I go in there at any time and I can pick out some of the gangbangers that I'm sure the superintendent's very well aware of that frequent that particular club. So, I just wonder if you do a comparison of that nature, because it may not be so. This is not an outlier anecdotally, I can say, compared to some of the other licensed premises we have.
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, the preliminary study was limited to karaoke's and liquor primaries and specific to a few more problematic calls for service locations. So we haven't done a broader study of food primaries versus liquor primaries. There's hundreds of food primaries as well, and it would be that would be a different comparison. I would.
Well, not necessarily, because the reason I'm saying this is because they serve alcohol and they attract a certain element of individuals. So whether they're primary or secondary or whatever, I think we've got to have that, because I think that is going to go a long way in either confirming the data that you've provided in a couple of reports to us, or it's going to show that the Zodiac is not that far out of the range of these other places. That's all I'm asking for you. I'm not asking for you to take any action. I'm just asking to do a comparison. And I know from your academic background, you're used to doing these comparisons to determine whether we have valid data or not.
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, staff can certainly work with their colleagues from the RCMP and do an analysis of the data associated with a sample of food primaries, randomized versus liquor primaries, karaoke's, to ensure that there's an equitable analysis and not just cherry picking. And we can get back to council on that.
And I think that would be very valid, and I think that could be part of Councillor Galander's referral. Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to ask something similar to that, because while I agree with some of the councillors that we shouldn't be rewarding bad behavior, I'm wondering what constitutes bad behavior relative to everybody else. I think of the Buccaneer, I think of Earl's, I think of other places. I think of back when I was a kid and we would have the community center dances, and for sure the cops showed up, and for sure there were beer bottles and fights and this and that and the other thing, and there was not supposed to be any liquor served there. So, right? So there's going to be some feathers ruffled when people get together. So I'd be curious to know what the difference is, and if this constitutes something egregious. I understand they've also done some other things to try and fall in the bylaw with the way that they've done their interior decorating that is questionable. And so it's not like they're necessarily towing the line on everything, but I'd be interested to have a fair comparison, if you will, on other places and what's going on in the community. And if this is a huge outlier, we'll carry on, and if not, then it's perhaps worth looking at. Councillor Galanders?
I can make a referral after we vote.
Okay, all right. Second? All in favor? All opposed? Opposed with Councillor Heed in the opposition? Okay. Councillor Galanders, so you've lost your...
Okay, I'd like to move that staff explore how a pilot could be run for karaoke clubs and nightclubs to extend nighttime hours and report back. And include all the things that were discussed as far
And
as
include comparison data.
comparison data.
Okay, second? You want to talk about it? Yep. Councillor Hobbs?
Yeah, just a question, like, if you're talking about different restaurants.
Talk into the thing, because staff can't hear you.
If you're talking about different types of food primary, liquor primary, that kind of thing, should we mention karaoke, or should we leave it like broader, and maybe staff can mention that or comment on that? Because that's a very specific kind of place, right?
Which is karaoke and nightclubs would encompass the 12 establishments that sort of fall under that. So I was sort of thinking they're the ones that are more nighttime. The restaurants usually close at midnight.
Well, I thought we could kind of fold it into what Councillor Heed was talking about the overall kind of analysis and to see if we're dealing with outliers or if it's kind of a common trend. But maybe that's not what we're talking about right here.
For explore how a pilot could be run for establishments in general. Licensed premises. So instead of karaoke clubs and nightclubs, licensed premises to extend nighttime hours and report back.
Yep.
Okay, sure.
Okay, all in favor? Second? Okay. Sorry, any opposed? It's passed. Thank you. Item number 3, Richmond Fire Rescue Monthly Activity Report. Acting Chief.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Just one minor update to our report. Just on CS 26 in the bottom bullet, met with staff from Health Protection Team from Vancouver Coastal Health. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Counselor Day? Oh, sorry, Counselor Heath, never mind. Okay.
Ladies first.
No, you were first in line, but I thought you were a 5 today and not just a 4.
I'm always a 4. Thank you, and my questions are going to be related to the overdose poisoning incidents, the 26th in April. This is a few more than last April, and pay particular reference to, as I mentioned to the chief earlier, that last month you'll recall that we had several in the other category, but we seem to have an equal breakdown on the opioid, indoor and outdoor of 13, along with the other 13. So that's, you know, a little concerning, and I did have a discussion with Chief Wishlove with respect to that after our last meeting. But the particular one I wanted to kind of look at, and I was talking to the chief earlier, is if you go to CS 38, which is the heat map, and you look at the fact that it looks like one location of 6 outdoor calls regarding poisoning and overdoses. So I just wanted a little more descriptives on that, because it looks like it's right here. It looks like it possibly could be Brighouse Park area.
And through the chair to Councillor Heed, it does look like there is a cluster there. I would like to go back to our record management system so I could take an analysis of the statistics, and I could get back to you on further details with that.
Yes, that would be appreciative. And you know, I want to thank your people for delving into this over the last year and providing additional information to us. I think it's very helpful given the crisis we're in right now, and given the fact that although we had a bit of a reduction for the last month on the overdoses, or for April, I'm not sure that we're receding or abating the way we had hoped we would over the next little while. So I think the more attention we can put on it, the better. So if you could provide that, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Sorry, Counselor Galanders.
Thank you through the chair. Thank you for the report. I echo the same comments that Councillor Heed has about the overdose poisonings, especially that 9 are outdoors and 4 indoors. So people are just out there dying on the streets. It's we need to get a handle on it. But my question to you is just about the beach fire on Iona Beach, CS 28. It sounds like a really serious fire. It was really difficult to put out. Unable to deal with it with the hydrants, so had to use, or you could, but had to use an excavator. So was this a human-caused fire?
I through the chair to Councillor Galanders, I think in the absence of any incendiary device or anything of that sort which would be determined by our fire investigation, to put it clearly, wood on a beach on its own doesn't start fire on its own. So I think it's fair to assume that it would have been a human-caused fire.
Okay, that was, it sounded like a sarcastic
No,
answer.
no, not at all. Not at all. No, of course not.
I mean, obviously a beach doesn't self-ignite, but it could have been
Yeah.
blown over from, you know, if it was a really windy day, there could have been sparks on a boat nearby, or, you know what I mean? I just don't know. What I mean is, were people on the beach that started a fire on purpose and left, was anybody caught? Is anybody getting charged with anything, that kind of thing?
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, thank you. I certainly didn't mean to be sarcastic my first time at this table. But there was no evidence. We did perform a fire investigation, and there was nothing determined at the time. There was no witnesses that were seen to have lit the fire. So that's our investigation at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Day.
Thank you very much. Okay. So my question is, on page CS 32, it says that in April this year, there was 26 overdose poisonings, but on the map on page 38, it says there was 13 opioid overdose incidents. So there was 13 that were something else, like what would?
Yeah, that could be, alcohol, for example, which would not have been captured with the opioid statistic. Apologies through the chair to Councillor Day. So there's the breakdown of opioid versus overdose. There's a number of parameters that would help determine that, but opioid is a specific form of breaking down the overdose for you.
Okay, and then on, I note that there, in your great report, by the way, thank you so much, 1,008 incidents in April. Of those, 46 were calls for fire and 530 calls were for medical. And then on page 27, it states that emergency medical assistance change of scope and ongoing recruit training evaluations. You could explain what that is, please, because obviously with such a humongous amount of medical calls as opposed to fire calls, that must mean something. Can you go into more detail?
Only through the chair to Councillor Day, the change of scope is a provincial mandate through the EMA licensing board. And so we are required to address as such. The staff continue on a 3-year cycle to renew their EMA licensing. That's an individual license held by the individual. In addition to that, we also ask our staff to train with Red Cross First Responder, and that's on that 3-year cycle. So the training is keeping pace with the types of calls of service that we receive.
So are we maintaining the same level of service when it comes to medical calls, or are we increasing the capabilities of the first responders, fire first responders?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, there is perhaps a small increase given the change of scope. Part of that with, I believe, the provincial emergency mandate that allowed first responders to administer naloxone, for example.
Yeah.
Should that expire, we would still like to provide that service for our community. So that is captured within the change of scope update so that we can continue to, whether or not the provincial mandate continues to provide that service for citizens.
So obviously not paramedic level, but what
No.
level are firefighters at?
EMA, through the chair to Councillor Day, EMA first responder.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Counselor Hobbs.
Thanks, and through the chair, thanks for the report, Chief. Just 2 quick questions. On page 29, there's a mention of an electric scooter motorcycle fire, and I just wondered, that is in the news a fair bit, not just in Richmond, but I mean all over the place. So are you noticing any increase in electric vehicle, scooter, different modes of transportation? Are you noticing any increase in fires with that type of mode of transportation?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, our fire statistics are remaining fairly consistent. However, with the adoption of more of these electrified modes of transportation, we are encountering them more. So when we look across the statistics North America wide, we see this increase. And some of the proactive measures that we're taking is through our outreach squad and our public education campaign, which will speak to adhering to the manufacturer's recommendations for these devices. In addition to refraining from modifying any of these devices. But we certainly are seeing and attending to more of electrified modes of transportation, whether it's through MVI or fires.
Yeah, that's interesting, the point you make about people modifying it, because I could see that possibly causing a fire, but also there seem to be some that are almost like the beach, spontaneous combustion in a way, and that might be a manufacturing issue, but you might not have those numbers. But the other question I just wanted to ask, the last one is, when it comes to the medical calls, you know, we hear a lot about Richmond's aging population, and so medical calls are probably going to go up correspondingly with that at least. And I know you can't really do an analysis on that, but I do notice on the heat maps too, that when you look at certain locations, there definitely seem to be clusters of medical calls. And for instance, you know, Blundell and Number One Road, or with Lyons Manor, or with some of the other seniors housing. So is that something that you do see, or is that just how the map appears?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, you're correct. Our medical calls are keeping pace with the aging demographic, and specific locations of these facilities, as demonstrated by the heat map, do indicate that where these facilities exist, you will see it on the heat map, and we will get more medical calls for service to those facilities. So it is keeping pace as the demographic changes.
Yes, that'll probably continue growing, I guess, so, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Following on to what Councillor Hobbs was saying, when you deal with a fire, an electric fire, is a fire extinguisher useful in such a situation, or do you use a specialized something else?
We're continuing to monitor some best practices in North America to find out what is the most effective way to extinguish these fires. Honestly, what it comes down to is water, lots and lots of water, particularly with electric vehicles. That's the best practice that we have out to date. The innovation would be on how to apply that water and where these batteries exist within these vehicles. So we do have quite a robust training program in Richmond Fire that recognizes and addresses these electric vehicle fires, as we're seeing more and more of them on the road. So we are trying to keep pace with our training.
Okay, thank you. I'm wondering if our planning department has any connection with that. So if we're requiring people to put in electric charging facilities, should there be a different level of sprinkler system in that space to deal with these potential eventualities, or maybe not, I don't know, but perhaps that's something, that's a conversation that might start happening. Okay, thank you. We have a motion? Second? All in favor? Thank you. Oh, do we have a briefing? Do you have anything else you want to add, talk about, share with us?
Well, thank you, through the chair. I would like to share the success of our Open Doors event that happened on last Saturday. It was a beautiful day out. There was, I believe it was 5,239, very specific number that attended at Station 1. And by all accounts, it was a very successful event with our emergency programs, our outreach team, and our YVR fire rescue partners. They had a very big shiny truck there, which I'm sure was an attractant, but it was a beautiful day and a very successful event for Richmond.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Councillor Heed? No? Thanks. RCMP monthly activity report?
Where's Dave? We need him. Good. Oh, I'm sorry. I do not have anything to add to the report, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Hobbs?
Oh, thanks, and through the chair. Thank you for the report. Just a few quick questions. With the retail theft issue, you noted in the report there were 19 arrests. I'm just wondering if there's any indication if any of those people arrested were prolific offenders or part of any organized crime group, which is becoming more active in Metro Vancouver again when it comes to retail theft.
Yes. Through the chair. Councillor Hobbs, we do have several of the offenders being repeat offenders. We do have signs that are somewhat organized in a way that the theft being like several items, like we're talking about maybe potentially 15 pairs of pants or 20 of certain items that being sold. So this particular items, we believe this to be kind of somewhat organized. And we also have the typical people that would come and steal things that are like individual items for themselves. So we have both. But majority of all of them are, 3/4 of all of them are people that are not from Richmond.
Right. Okay, I mean, that organized theft thing is raising its head again in different areas. So next is just the fraud issue with the suspects impersonating Chinese police officers and that issue. Obviously, that would be targeting probably a specific group that has Chinese language ability. So the solution to that, I imagine, involves a couple things, and it must be an education publicity thing to try and educate people on what's happening. So what is happening with that?
That's correct. So a lot of it is education, and we also create a lot of awareness in specific language. It is targeting a specific ethnicity in our community. So we are doing a lot in regards to this. Not only do we do it's X now. We're doing on our social media, we're doing a lot of awareness. We're doing as well in the community. We have a special newspaper as well and news media in a certain language that we actually have our economic crime investigator who conduct regular interviews in the language to actually educate the people. And we also have a pamphlet to which you will see soon, or maybe it's already been delivered, that is in several languages in the tax, for the city tax. So we actually have awareness about frauds.
Okay, yeah, that's a really important one, just because of the vulnerability and maybe lack of familiarity with how policing works in Canada for some people that are new to the country. So glad to hear you're doing that. With the assaults and the serious assaults and the assaults with weapon, I was just curious, what kind of weapons are we talking about? I realize it's probably not guns, but is it predominantly knives or bats or clubs or?
So the serious assault is actually normally like, it's everything but knife, because we have its own categories. Weapons like guns do have their own categories, vehicles and so on. So this would be like rock, sticks, a hammer perhaps. And I'm saying these as example because I do not know each and individual one of these files, because I would have to go read it, and I do not have this at this time, but these would be the examples of some of these items that people, stapler could be. It's anything but these
Yeah,
things.
so it sounds spontaneous and whatever
Yes.
is handy, right? Okay, just a couple more. With the B&Es, the property crime rate is probably a little higher than, we would like to see it in terms of your comparators with other detachments. But I am curious if you have any concept or idea about who's committing the break-in enters. And what I mean is, that's generally by what's being taken. Is it, an opportunist thing with younger guys going into houses and taking change or something, like binoculars? Or is it more organized with people coming in, dismantling or disconnecting alarm systems and taking large appliances and really expensive high-end things? What are we looking at with the break-in enters?
The majority of them are crime of opportunity. Specific, some in high rises, not high rises, some in apartment buildings, some of them in utilizing the back doors. It's not an organized crime group per se that's going to be targeting, like you mentioned, some specific items in household.
Yeah, or high-end value things like jewelry or art or something. Okay, thanks. And just two last comments, just noting the volunteer hours, that looked pretty spectacular, and the recognition for them. And the engagement team has been out there. I saw them at Hugh Boyd about a week ago, and just my compliments to them. They're out everywhere, as with the fire services team. They're out everywhere and just doing an outstanding job, so thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, just a couple, great report as always. It was good to see, unfortunately, on page 43, one hate incident, or maybe two, but the hate crimes have gone down to zero. and that's encouraging to see them. But unfortunately, we had an incident together at the school. Just make a comment, but I'm glad to see us all reporting that out. I think it's important that kind of thing, and the fact that you also mentioned what the heat incident was, and I think we can work together to try to correct that. The one thing I did want to mention, the mental health, 216. I wouldn't mind seeing a breakdown. It's just like what we saw fire rescue when you go to medical. An ambulance and fire truck goes by my house at least every other day out to Edgewater Park. And I have to believe it's the same person or the same persons. We can't have 12 heart attacks in a week at Edgewater Park or whatever it is. So I'm wondering whether we can break that down. The reason I ask that, we just received a mental wellness report for 2023, which was conducted by Vancouver Coastal Health, I believe, and we don't have the sample size. I'm trying to get it. But in there, 51.8% of the people felt that their mental wellness wasn't as good as it was before COVID. And that concerns me because that's the society as a whole. And, you know, it relates to mental health. We got 51 point of what sample was that, et cetera. But if we got a society who doesn't feel their mental health is that good, that means, you know, 48.2% only feel well, and the rest of us don't. So I'd like to try to see that if that's a repeat, of say, you know, there were 5 repetitions or whatever it was. I think it'd be great for us to understand that a little bit better. I did want to echo, along with what Councillor Hobbs has said, appreciated what happened with ICBC and the scooters at Lansdowne and the people there riding all over the place. Glad to see, of course, they had to have their helmet, but the other groups that were there in the interface with ICBC, with the community engagement team, kudos to them, and it's great. And those of us who went around to Doors Open, I stood on the fringe of the fire department. I couldn't get near the place. I stood across the street because I wasn't going into, excuse my French, the mob over at the police station. And I couldn't believe the number at number 1 in Williams at our fire ambulance, which is down near me, well engaged. I mean, there was five ambulances there, 3 doing the PR work and 2 on the side ready to go. And that, I think our police fire ambulance were well represented in terms of people wanting to see them, at least from what I saw. So congratulations, and thank you all for the community engagement. Probably, they were the most popular venues in all of Richmond. I can tell you one elsewhere too. And you didn't have this. I'd be interested in the number that showed up at the police station. And there were hundreds and hundreds at 3 in Williams. So anyhow, kudos all around for an absolutely great job. And the other thing too, wearing the other hat, not only do you put on, but the interest in it. That to me also tells something about our community, is becoming more and more engaged, more and more educated, hopefully, more and more integrated than normally when I see these kinds of numbers. And we got a long way to go yet, but we're really going in the right direction. So thank you very much through the chair.
Thank you, Councillor Galanders.
Thank you through the chair, and yeah, thanks for the good report. Yeah, just to highlight a few things that are definitely going in the right direction. You know, assaults are down 5% from last year. Auto theft is down 14% from last year. The drug offenses, although those are usually at YVR, but they're 67% decrease from last year. Mental health, 15% decrease from last year. Commercial break-in enters, 26% decrease from last year. And theft from automobile, 45% decrease from last year. So those things are all great, moving in the right direction. But the 26% increase in the residential break-in enters is really concerning. And I'm just wondering what we can do and what are we doing as far as that. There was something that we brought up last year about about neighborhood opting in on sharing their camera data. Was that an actual referral? Do you think? No? I don't know, but that's an idea, right? But people could opt in to share their doorknob footage. We can talk about it later, but I mean, and then what about expanding Block Watch as well? I mean, I was wondering if you had any insights into why the residential break-ins would be increasing when all the other types of thefts are decreasing, well, besides shoplifting.
Sorry, through the chair, Councilor Gilda. I don't have very much an explanation. I think I would have to dig down into every single one of the files to look at where they're at and who we identified actually as being the suspect in those crimes. But no, I can't say.
Yeah, well, maybe we can look at what we're doing. We can talk about it later. We can look at old referrals and see if something for next month that we could see if there's anything that we can do to try to help with that situation. And the shoplifting, you know, it's disappointing that you did that big release and recovered all the stolen goods and arrested many people, and then the shoplifting only went down 1% the next month, right? So it's just still such a huge problem. I hope that you just keep it up and keep doing the blitzes that you are trying to do.
Yes, through the chair. We can't let our foot off the pedal for that one, for sure.
Yeah.
We are doing more and more boost and bust, and we are doing them. And like I said, 3/4 of them come from another jurisdiction. So when we actually are putting an emphasis in doing it with all our community partners, then they tend to be going elsewhere. And then when elsewhere is doing the same thing, then they tend to be coming back. So we just have to be consistent in being always
I think so,
out there.
yeah. You get the message out there that this isn't the place to do it, right? One last question through the chair, if that's all right. On CS 47, the top 5 traffic infractions, I was just curious, so a driver's license infraction is the #1 infraction, and speeding is less than that, but how would you find that someone has an invalid driver's license if you weren't pulling them over for speeding in the first place? Like, how does that become the #1? Curious. Do you know?
I can't really say why it became the #1, but I mean, sorry, were you asking me how I identify someone with a driver license issues? Yes, they are being pulled over, obviously. It is a traffic. Correct. Well, normally it would be for violation of speeding or maybe seatbelt, I'm sorry.
Right.
Seatbelt or anything else,
Distracted
following too
driving.
close, maybe not the cell phone. Like, there's a series of reasons why we would pull them over. But depending of what the other reasons we pull them over is, driver license would be one of the most outrageous, because if you do not have a driver license, obviously there's a lot of reasons why you don't. So,
Yeah, well, great for catching that many people with invalid licenses. Is that a higher number than usual?
I wouldn't know, I'm sorry.
Yeah. It just jumped out at me. I hadn't noticed it before. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Heed.
Yes, I don't think they're all invalid licenses, but that's usually a secondary fine. I think the superintendent would agree with me. It's the original, if you look at the total numbers, whether it's a moving infraction or speeding or something like that, first thing they do is ask you for your driver's license. If you can't produce it, that's even an offense for failing to produce.
Right.
It could be at home or whatever, but that's part of it. I just want to hit on a couple of issues, and one Councillor McNulty already mentioned, and it's kind of concerning to me, given that we're starting to really see a trend where the hate crime incidents against LGBTQ plus people are being targeted. And this is a phenomenon throughout the world right now, if you look at what's going on, especially in the month that we're in right now. This is kind of concerning to me because if I look at what you're talking about here, you're talking about high school students. So your youth services, I'm just assuming, are probably involved in it, but boy, if there's something we need to do within our education system that's going to deal with these, I think we've got to make sure that the education system is dealing with it. So I don't know if you have any additional information on this incident or not. If not, that's fine. I just wanted to raise that, and it's something I think we need to be aware of. We know when school's out, our crosswalks, our rainbow crosswalks get defaced, whether it's in front of City Hall or at Palmer School or something like that. So if we're starting to see an uptick in that, I think we've got to kind of deal with it. And I know Mr. Warzel prepares this report, but when we talk about the year-to-date crime rates and the comparison, yes, I understand it might be easier for you to get the data for the RCMP one, but boy, it'd be helpful, given the fact that we're connected to Vancouver, New West on one side, and Delta through the tunnel, if we were to able to get in this particular bar graph, those crime rates for those municipalities. So as you mentioned, if the shoplifter, if the pressure's in Vancouver and it, now trends over to Richmond or something like that, or vice versa. So I don't know if that's possible. I'm assuming through the UCR reporting, if that's where you're getting it from, we'd be able to get that comparison. But I think that would be a good comparison. I don't think we have to divide it up based on the color of uniform, but it'd be really good from a statistical point of view. And if that's possible, I think that would be helpful, because it's just a rate, it's not the frequency. Thank you.
Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Well, I also want to touch on the hate crime, hate incident. When I look at 2021, we had 21 hate crimes and 24 hate incidents. Those were terrifying numbers. And here we are in 2024. To date, we have 0 hate crimes and 2 hate incidents. So I think that the hate has no place. Blitz has done a lot of good, and I give everybody credit for that. And thank you very much for making such an insanely great difference. That's something to be very, very proud of. And I wonder if we did something like that plan with the posters and reaching out with, Say No to Drugs pilot, because that kind of success should be built on. And my question is, I was just appointed to the brand-new Youth Advisory Committee last month, and I talked to them about things like the DARE program, and you mentioned in your report there are 486 elementary schools that we visited, which is a great number. But what those youth told me loud and clear is they feel they need an adult version of the DARE program in high schools. And I'm wondering, I know that we mentioned how many visits that the police did at various high schools, but would it be possible to do a grown-up version of DARE and have outreach? Because what I'm hearing about from these youth is that drugs are an issue and hate incidents are an issue. So what do you think?
So, through the chair, thank you. So an adult version of a DARE program administered to youth in the youth's
I'm thinking
school?
grade 10 or 11, maybe?
We can certainly look at it. Currently, right now, what we have is a DARE program, which is a drug program, which is catered to youth in high school. So we try to actually give it to them prior of them reaching the age of adulthood. We can look at it. I'm sorry, I'm thinking at the same time how this could potentially look like. We have to also understand that this is a school program. It's a school, it's administered to the school, it's with the agreement of the school board and everything like that. So I'm not sure a program catered to an adult provided in a high school would be I don't know, I would have to look and see how this would have to be given, but I think I have to be very mindful in programs that we provide to school. I think the DARE program is providing a very good educational program for the youth, and it's really directed at the group that we are speaking to. I would have to do some research, I'm sorry. I don't know how an adult.
I think if I may, we had Constable Walker here speaking to us last month at this committee meeting, and she actually said that she does a children's version and a teen version, but she only does it in schools where she's invited to come in, and she hadn't been invited by any of the high schools in the last year to come and speak. So it's actually this
The reason for.
The reason the kids haven't had it is because their schools haven't brought it in. It's not because we don't have one. We have one. She hadn't been invited to any of the high schools this year.
That's something I
So-
think we should follow up on.
So yeah, you can talk to your kids and say that their schools have to invite them.
Yeah, because when I was talking, I mean, I'm going to bring that up to the Youth Advisory. We meet, I guess, on Wednesday, and talk to them about that and see if they can put together some kind of initiative. These kids are amazing in this Youth Advisory Committee. They are so committed, and they range in age from 15 to 23. And they really, really care about their school environment. And that was the first thing they brought up at the very first meeting. So, yeah, let's follow up on that. Maybe we can all put the feelers out. Thank you.
Councillor McNulty?
I just wanted to follow up. The Vancouver School Board has been doing it for 30 years. Okay, so the programs don't exist through what you said,
yeah,
but you
we
got to
have.
be invited to the school. That's all.
Thank
There
you.
are very, very good programs at every grade level in Vancouver School Board, so I'll leave it with you.
And Councillor Heed, we can probably get you the minutes for one of our recent school board liaison committee meetings where they outlined quite a bit of their work around the whole SOGI, LGBTQ plus programming that they do in their schools. Okay. We have I have a question. Oh, actually, I'll wait for the briefing. So we have a motion on the monthly report. Thanks. All in favor? Okay. And RCMP OIC briefing.
Well, I think I have to tell you the numbers for our open house. I am a very competitive person, although 5,239 is very high. But we had just about 1,800 that visited. It was a very successful day. We were also on the water as well because it was the provincial canoe competition with the First Nation we have here. So we were all over. But yes, very happy and very supportive of all the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nothing else.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, I have one question. I've heard a few complaints from some people recently, and I've noticed it myself. There seems to be an uptick in people going through red lights. So, people are trying to turn left, the last person gets through the light, but a couple extra people squeak through after that. Are we looking at any extra enforcement around that? Like, I know you could probably stand out here right now and start handing out tickets like candy. So I'm wondering if there's any.
So if
look
it
to
is a
that.
complaint, I'm more than happy to receive them. When they have complaints, they can actually send it to us and we will look at them. We will definitely assign it to our road safety unit and they will look into it.
Okay, thank you. Sorry? Okay. Councillor Heed?
Yes,
Not to be outdone.
you reminded me. 2 Road and Westminster Highway, the Chevron station. They reduce their prices and it causes confusion around that entire intersection. I'm going to raise this at Public Works too, with respect to it. And there's been accidents around there because people come off the 2 Road bridge going south and there's cars are stopped right through the intersection wanting to turn into the Chevron to save themselves their 5 or 6 cents a liter. And I'm sure if you look at, there was recently another accident. I live very nearby and you can hear the crunching of the cars and the screeching. And sure enough, it's happening. And I know your members used to go around there and they used to make the cars line up on Westminster Highway and come in one way and not block the intersection at 2 and Westminster Highway, which is one of our busier intersections. So, like I said, I'll bring it up at to the traffic people to see what the city can do on that. But whatever you guys do and what your statistics show for accidents at that intersection would be interesting. So, just something I see heads shaking too. I think we've all come across that.
Yeah. I was gassing up there the other day and they said that the RCMP were there handing out tickets the other day.
Great.
Because he's like, oh yeah, people stop on the road and they get busted for stopping on the road in the no stopping zone. I'm wondering if this is perhaps a bylaw question we could ask, because I know we have a bylaw around, you're not allowed to pump your own gas. Would we be able to limit them picking a price and sticking to it for the day? Or like, what kind of things do we have to help, mitigate the chaos?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, through the chair, we do have a bylaw that stipulates that there must be workers that provide pumping of gas. We can look at with the law department whether we have the purview to regulate to that extent. We also have a traffic bylaw that prevents you from stopping on a roadway.
So we could also send our bylaw people, so not just RCMP, we could also send bylaw people in the afternoon to
To the
dish out
chair,
tickets too.
the bylaw department could work with the RCMP if the vehicle is in fact stopped. If it's a moving vehicle violations typically fall under the purview of the RCMP.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay, we have some discussion on Steveston Parking, 6A. We have a referral for, well, I don't know which of you would like to start on this.
the overall motion because it's a referral to staff.
Okay, hang on, press your button.
Okay, yeah, I keep forgetting that. Okay, the motion I have is regarding the parking overall in Steveston Town Site. And the wording is that staff do a comprehensive parking study on the Steveston Town Site. Staff to look at all occupancy levels and options, including empty spots, loading zones, permit zone, and paid parking zone, as well as Steveston Harbor Authority properties. And I don't really want to speak, so referral to look at it, come back with a budget as soon as possible, and let's get this study done. It's not going to be done for the summer, but it's an annual problem, and it's going to get worse over the summer, but we've got to address it once and for all. And if it costs us a couple $100,000, we'll find the money, so get it done, but it's got to be done. So that's all I have to say, and
Councillor,
staff, good luck.
Councillor Galanders?
Thank you, Chair. I just have a question about this. So did we just receive an email or was it something printed off about this? That there was a Steveston parking referral back in 2021 that's been being studied for the last 3 years, and then they're just going to open up a let's talk about it next month? So is that different? I just read it today. It was,
Yeah, through the chair, the Transportation Department is actually doing a streetscape study, and some of that is encompassed in their current Let's Talk Richmond questionnaire. So this is more extensive, and we will be working, it's beyond our enforcement side of things. So when new bylaws come, we will enforce. We don't have the capacity to do that kind of level of study, so we'll be working with our colleagues in transportation.
okay. Yeah, good. Thanks.
So I might not go away if I were you, but Councillor Hobbs?
Are we voting on this one now, or?
Oh, I thought you had a question, wanted to speak on it, or you had a question on it.
I'm sorry, that was a mistake.
Okay. If I can make a friendly, if it maybe in part of the consultation they can talk, or maybe as part of the study, some communication can happen maybe with the Steveston Merchants Association. And certainly the Chamber of Commerce offered to be of support on this because there was comment around the chamber table that certainly parking is an issue. It's an issue for people coming as customers, and for people as employers. There was also the comment that, if you're an employee downtown, you don't expect to be able to park your car for free all the time either. So Steveston's becoming busier, and there's going to have to be an attitude shift of the ability just to park outside your door. Okay, so Chamber, Tourism, Steveston Merchants Association, and other stakeholders as you may see fit.
Yeah, all of them, good.
Okay. Motion, action on the motion? Sorry. Yeah, Councillor Day?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to ask staff, I understand we're getting a $94 million Stevenson Community Center. Will there be additional parking in that development?
Yes.
I mean, it's-
Yeah, but it's not for the,
I'd still like to know,
Staff
the reason I ask is that we should probably be talking about building a parkade at some place, at some point. And I'm wondering, I know that the center is going to be far larger and there's going to be more parking, but is it possible that it could alleviate some of the parking concerns in the village?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, that would be adding scope to a project you already approved, and it's way beyond the purview of
Yeah.
staff.
But with what's already been approved, what are we looking at?
I will have to get back to you. I don't have those
Okay.
numbers.
Maybe provide a number or a memo on that. So, you know, I look at places like the MCAL and see the people circling and circling and trying to find parking, and the same thing in the village. I mean, sometimes you have to just, we want everybody to take the bus, but at the same time, people do have cars, especially people who are coming from out of town. So I think a parkade of sorts would be really beneficial at both the village and at MCAL.
okay, so let's vote on the motion. All in favor? Any against? Okay, thank you. 6B, referral on Steveston Lane parking. Come on, press it once. Only once. Stop touching it so much.
Your light doesn't light in.
I don't know what's happening. Okay.
It's red now.
Don't touch anything, just talk.
You know, I don't know if this will be redundant or if it's necessary, but I think it might be because it's specific and it's about the lanes, and that's the communication we've all had from a lot of people down in the Stevenson area, merchants, residents as well. So we've all parked in the lanes for decades. We do have a bylaw that you can't park in the lanes. So the issue really becomes, in some points within certain lanes, there's pinch points where, you know, you might not be able to get a fire truck through, and obviously that's a problem. So this one is specific and probably shorter time span. And so I'd like staff to look at a referral that would be something along the lines of that staff review, analyze, and assess the parking in Stevenson lanes to determine when and under what circumstances or conditions parking in lanes can occur. And that means a number of things. It might mean permits, it might mean commercial parking, it might mean a number of different things. I don't want to be too prescriptive, but the fact is we have a lot of staff, probably about 250 that work in local businesses there. It'd be great if everybody could take the bus or ride a bike, but the fact is a lot of people can't. So, and a lot of people aren't making a ton of money there either. So parking's tight. It's tight for visitors. It's tight for residents that have to drive sometimes down there too. So I think this could be a shorter term aspect to what Councillor McNulty already passed. And I think that also staff would look at things in terms of education and how we move forward in responding to calls on a priority basis and that kind of thing when they're actually blocking traffic or driveways. And I think they can work with all the stakeholders that have already been listed on that. So I'd make that referral.
Second. Councillor Heed?
Yeah, I'm unclear as to why we need to separate them. We know Steveston is a real problem with all parking. If you look at what's occurred elsewhere, and it's going to get just worse when we start to look at the increased FSR and the reduction of parking with the provincial laws that are coming out, we start to look at areas, parking's going to be hell for a lot of people here in Richmond. I'm just not sure why we'd want to separate that, and I think we've got to look at that whole area there and determine whether we're going to allow permit parking, whether we're going to even look at metered parking, or something of that nature, which includes the laneways. You know, it all has to be done under one. I think if we piecemeal it, it's going to confuse people even more, but I think if we can get some efficient timeline in place to have this all done, it would be more beneficial to do it all at once.
I think that the first referral is going to take quite a bit of time, and I think we're hoping that the lane referral could come quickly in time to support staff working through this summer immediately, so that as we start into the busy tourist season, that we don't have staff leaving or getting tickets or whatever else through the summer months.
Answer this question right now is, would we have to create, for example, if we were going to allow parking in the laneways or even permit parking, would we not have to go through a whole bylaw process of creating the bylaw for that to happen?
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, if we were to have metered parking or parking passes in an area which is not defined in Schedule K of the traffic bylaw, then there would require a amendment to the bylaw to do so. If these were city time allotted spots, that would not require a bylaw change to do so. If they were free parking, if they were paid parking, that would require that amendment to the traffic bylaw, and specifically Schedule K.
Councillor McNulty.
Just quickly following on that, I'm trying to stay away from the bylaws, sporting antis. We're looking for temporary relief. That's what we're really looking at right now. And we're not going to have the LaConner aspect of which I'm proposing. Okay, that's a bigger issue. And we need to, are we going to help the Steveston people out, especially if they're employees, by giving relief to let them park in lanes or outside with a permit or not, or are we not? And if we're not, we need to tell them that. The other thing is, if we quickly reduced parking from 3 hours to 2 hours, we would open up 200 parking spots every 2 hours. Okay, people would have to move. And I'm not talking about employees, I'm talking about people going in for a beer and a sandwich and then walking out to Gary Point and spend the day out there and parking their car there because nobody's going to take them. So that's what I think you're looking at. We're looking for immediate relief. What are we prepared to do? What can staff do over the next number of weeks and come back? Mine is a professional consultant to be hired, probably, to look at every aspect of it and every piece of property that there is down there. So that's what I was hoping through the chair, that we would get. I think you were alluding that way too. We've got to get, we're getting people, our staff that are getting tickets because they're trying to park outside and they got an 8-hour shift or whatever, and they're going to find they're not going to get staff down there because there's nowhere to park. And there's actually plenty of parking in Steveston. You just got to find it and lay it out and make people go there. And that's the problem. And the community center has lost 70 parking spots every other Sunday across the street, where we have the, what I call the apartment property. We lost another 70 parking spots, 140 spots gone right off the bat. And you got 10,000 people coming into Steveston. And in 2 weeks' time, you're going to have 100,000 people coming in Steveston. And they're going to be up on Williams Road outside my house, which I don't mind. But that's what I'm hoping staff will be able to come back at. And I'd like to be able to say, give us a preliminary report through the chair within 2 weeks. You can do it or you can't do it. And at least we can tell them, hey, gang, our hands are tied.
Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I have a question of staff. So I just recently went to the village to go to Village Bikes, where I was dropping off and I was picking up my bike. And the signs were pretty clear. It said, no parking. Very simple. But I was able to stop long enough to just pick up the bike, drop off the bike, and I didn't take up any space. Now, technically, did I break the law, or does no parking mean there's a short period of time where you can drop off something, pick up something?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, there's a no stopping. That would be a violation there. The only provision would be if it was a commercial vehicle and there is a limited period of time, minutes literally, where they can unload for those purposes. But if it's a no stopping zone, it's not permitted, no matter the duration. If the vehicle stopped where it's not supposed to, then technically it's a violation.
So technically, I broke the law that day. I was under the impression that you cannot park there for sure. Like you almost have to leave your car running. But if you are dropping off or picking up something, because a lot of the shops don't have any parking in front of them. I mean, it's just, especially Stevenson Village, because of the way the curve is, there's just nowhere to stop and, or to park even for just a minute. So what if we allowed temporary loading, offloading, again, like 10-minute maximum or something like that in the lanes? Would that create better flow for the businesses? Because a lot of people are just there to pick up a parcel.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, staff can certainly look at that. There are designated loading, unloading zones, and there are areas where passengers can be picked up and dropped off, but those are usually denoted by signage as well.
Yeah, I think through signage, we can accomplish better use of the lanes in Steveston. It's hard to know what you're supposed to do, I mean, I made a mistake, so, thanks.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thanks, and through the chair. Yeah, I've broken the law a few times in Steveston lanes too. Yeah, I think it would be good if we could do it all in one shot. I think that's a valid point, but I think the point that Councillor McNulty made is on as well, and that is we've been asked by the community to assist them with a problem that we all know exists, and so I think the first motion is more comprehensive and larger and will probably take more time, and this one I think we are trying for a quick win where we can assist them in making their businesses thrive and helping them to survive, because business is tough in Steveston right now. So anyway, with that, I'll just wrap it up.
Thanks. And maybe we want to amend the referral to be, we're looking for a short-term solution for immediate parking in.
Personally, I think staff understand that.
Okay.
I mean, you can wordsmith it to death.
Okay, all right. I have one more question of staff, if I may. When we approve a building, often we have someone has commercial space, or when we approve a new business, they have to have commercial space and they have to have a certain amount of customer parking. Do we ever check and see that it's customer parking versus like their own company van parked there all day? Do we ever have any checking on that?
Through to the chair, the regulation of a private lot is managed by the business. The only area where staff would get involved with would be if there was a change to the number of accessible parking spots that was done on a private lot, but otherwise the management of a private lot is run by that particular company.
Okay, so we just determine for whatever type of business it is, how many spots they have to have, and how they end up using it is their business.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, so motion on, let's call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. I'd like to make a referral as well on this. I'd like staff to look at creating secure bicycle parking in Steveston. I don't know if I have a seconder on that. So I have a friend, his son, 15 years old, was working at Steveston Seafood House, had his $300 bike stolen, gets off work. Well, if he'd driven his dad's $200,000 BMW to work, it still would have been there. But it would have taken up one of these precious parking spots, right? So we're not, if we really want to support the workers to come in a different way, we need to have a better solution. And it might be, not ultra central, but it could be something, and it could be even more geared to staff and quote locals, if you will. Because I know on the weekends, busier days, Tourism Richmond has their bike valet program to support people who are bicycling in from hither and yon. But I think this is going to be important, and I think especially once our Steveston bike lane gets finished, you're going to have more people that can access Steveston on their bicycles, and having secure bike parking and knowing that you can get your bicycle back at the end of whatever it is you're doing is going to make everybody's life better. Councillor Day?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's a brilliant idea, and I was already popping into my head, what if the Steveston Harbor Authority could partner with a nonprofit, and that could potentially benefit the community? And, you know, there's lots of times where they're not using all of their property, and they're pretty a helpful group over there at the harbor, and I wonder if that might be an option.
Never know. Anyway, let's call the question. All in favor? Okay. Opposed? Thank you. 6C, Breakhouse Safety and Community Impact. Councillor McNulty.
Thank you, Chair. We've been getting a lot of emails from not only the neighbors, but also the baseball players and the Tai Chi people across the street with regard to our people. Is there any movement of people over there through you to staff? The safety, they're concerned when the ambassadors leave at 8 o'clock, the washrooms get locked. There's nobody there that knows the clientele, if you wish. And some of the ladies, especially because there's a women's baseball team, show up. And all these strange people come around them and hassle them. And they're concerned with their own safety. So what can we do?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, staff are regularly patrolling the area, and when there are unattended, unoccupied tents, they are removed immediately, and those items are stored, and that's allowed for a greater flow of vacancies and movement. And staff do note when there are clear obstructions of the washrooms that is not permitted, that one is not permitted to obstruct any building, or so those are files that we prioritize and work with our colleagues in the RCMP to have people move along when they're obstructing a building like that, or if necessary, have them be detained.
But the washrooms are closed at 8 o'clock when the ambassadors leave. I thought when we established the program, we were going to have people on there from 8 and through the evening and what have you. You have a baseball team show up. As she says here, if I go take a pee, I can't. God forbid if I have to pee after 8:30 because no one's there, and there is a washroom for the residents of the park, destroy the women's washroom, et cetera. It's on, you know, these are our citizens. These are people who pay the taxes. If it means giving somebody an extra hour or 2 hours where there's a ball game going on, I assume that that's what we were doing when we approved this project.
Yeah, through the chair, I think there are several programs administered by several departments. I think you're specifically referring to the ambassador program that, and during when there are games on, the washrooms are open until the games are done. That will be Parks Department. And we have been working with the having heard some of the concerns. There are some adjustments to the ambassador program schedule. You have received a joint memo on it, so the times are adjusted based on the park use from the 8 o'clock to up to 10:30 p.m. on Wednesdays to accommodate the program. So depending on the different days, we have adjusting the schedule.
No, I don't want to differ with staff, okay? Quote unquote, there is no one there to open the washrooms. Okay? There may be a different park. Let's not pass the buck. We're talking community safety. Let's get somebody there. Okay? Yeah, I voted for $500,000 for this program. If not, I'm going to bring it up next Monday on GP to revisit the program because we cannot do what we said we would do. So I'm only getting it, and I've got 3 or 4 of them like this, so it's not safe. That's what they're telling us. I don't doubt what you're saying. You're reading from the book, from the program, but we've got to deal with the issue. So they say the ambassadors go home. I don't know who else is there. I don't know who was assigned that. Maybe we better, hope the committee might ask that on Monday, what the process is of dealing with Brickhouse Park, because it's not getting any better. I'm only working for the people of Richmond. So, just tell you what they said.
Councillor Galanders.
Thanks. Thank you, Chair. Thanks for bringing this up, Councillor McNulty. And I did appreciate getting the memo, because up until this point, the ambassadors were leaving pretty early. From my impression from some of the people that are working down there was that they were sometimes gone by 7. So the memo says that they're going to be staying open till 10:30 on certain nights based on, Wednesdays, based on the game schedule. So when is this starting? Because that's why you haven't seen, that's why the emails are saying it's still not happening, because this, we just got the memo today. So when is this 10:30 starting?
Immediately,
Yeah,
immediately.
immediately. So we can respond to people that we're going to extend the hours immediately. Now, the table for the ambassadors is sort of like in the park. And when we first brought this up, I suggested, do we need a security guard? Do we need to hire a security guard to be dealing with the area right around the bathrooms to make sure that it's accessible? So I'm not sure that the ambassadors are helping people to use washrooms feel safe.
I guess we will continue to monitor the program. We are trying to get the areas cleaned up as much as we can from the camps and whatnot. And so to minimize the park interface with, between the users and the unhomed.
Okay.
Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, through the chair. Yeah, I was pretty horrified when I read the letter from the athletic group and what they were experiencing. So I was thrilled to pieces when I read the memo from staff saying that the ambassador program had been extended and the hours had been added. I would hope that going forward that we would communicate with all the groups that use the park in the future so that we can anticipate when the ambassadors are needed. In other words, don't just set the hours and then hope it all works out, but actually talk to the groups, the user groups that are using that park. So I'm not sure, I think we kind of did it a little bit backwards this time, but we're learning, I would think. Would you agree?
Yes, indeed, I was going to say that. I think through this experience, we are working interdepartmentally and with the user groups to continue to improve the program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Open communication. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McNulty, you didn't have a referral, you just wanted to ask staff about it?
Well, I just want something done.
Okay, thank you.
I want the safety of those individuals looked after, no matter how we do it.
Do we have a manager's report today? Anybody, anything? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Excellent, thank you.